She had loved before, but this love felt different. It didn't ask her to explain herself. It didn't ask her to become more. It simply stayed. For most of her life, love had felt like effort, not the kind that excites you, the kind that drains you slowly. She learned early that love meant adjusting, listening more, speaking less, giving without keeping count. She was good at it. That became the problem. In her younger years, love felt urgent. She rushed toward it, afraid of missing it, afraid of being alone, afraid of not being chosen. She mistook intensity for depth, attention for care, effort for commitment. Over time, those loves faded. Some ended loudly, some ended quietly. Each one left her a little more careful, a little more tired. By midlife, love no longer felt exciting. It felt risky. She had built a life that worked, not perfect, but stable. She had routines, responsibilities, a rhythm she trusted. She didn't want disruption. She didn't want fixing. She didn't want promises that required constant reassurance. She wanted peace. When she met him, there was no spark she could describe, no rush of possibility, no dramatic beginning. They met through ordinary circumstances, a shared space, a slow familiarity. He didn't overwhelm her with attention. He didn't demand her time. He didn't try to impress her. At first, she wasn't sure what to make of that. She was used to proving herself, being interesting, being accommodating. With him, she didn't know what was expected. That uncertainty made her cautious. Their conversations were simple, unforced. They spoke about everyday things. He listened without interrupting, without correcting, without steering the conversation back to himself. She noticed that. She also noticed what didn't happen. He didn't rush her answers. He didn't fill silences nervously. He didn't push for emotional closeness before it arrived naturally. Time passed. She found herself looking forward to their conversations, not because they were exciting, but because they were easy. Ease felt unfamiliar. She waited for the other shoe to drop, for expectations to surface, for the moment she would need to explain herself. It didn't come. Instead, something quieter arrived. Comfort. She spoke honestly around him, not carefully. Honestly, she didn't feel the need to soften her opinions, or over-explain her past, or justify her choices. He didn't ask her to relive old stories. He didn't question why she was the way she was. He accepted her present. That acceptance unsettled her more than rejection ever had. She wondered if it was temporary, if he just hadn't seen the complicated parts yet. She waited. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Still no pressure. She noticed how her body responded around him. Her shoulders relaxed, her breath slowed. She didn't rehearse conversations in advance. She didn't replay interactions afterward. That alone felt like a gift. She had spent years in relationships where love needed constant proof. Proof of loyalty, proof of effort, proof of worth. With him, proof was unnecessary. He showed up when he said he would. He listened when she spoke. He remembered small details without being reminded. Not dramatically, consistently. Consistency felt different from intensity. Intensity had burned her before. Consistency steadied her. She noticed how she didn't feel anxious about the future. She wasn't planning. She wasn't bracing. She was present. That presence surprised her. She realized how often love had felt like performance, how rarely it had felt like rest. With him, she rested, not because he carried her, but because he didn't add weight. She didn't have to be impressive. She didn't have to be strong. She could just be. That realization frightened her. If love didn't require effort, what had she been doing all those years? She didn't rush to define the relationship. She didn't ask where it was going. She allowed it to exist without needing answers. That too was new. One evening, as they sat together quietly, she noticed something simple. She wasn't trying, not to please, not to impress, not to be chosen. She already felt chosen, not in words, in behavior. That kind of love didn't demand proof. It revealed itself through presence, patience, and respect. She didn't know yet what this love would become, but she knew this much. For the first time in a long while, love didn't feel like something she had to earn. And that changed everything. The safest love can feel frightening when you've only known effort. She didn't question his kindness out loud. She questioned it silently. Not because it felt wrong, but because it felt unfamiliar. She had learned to read love through tension, through urgency, through emotional unpredictability. This felt different, too steady, too calm, too easy. She waited for the moment when ease would turn into expectation. It didn't. Still, her body remained cautious. She noticed how quickly old instincts surfaced, the urge to explain herself, to justify her choices, to prepare for disappointment. These instincts were not about him. They were about memory. Memory of love that asked her to shrink, of affection that arrived only when she complied, of connection that required constant reassurance. She carried those memories quietly. He noticed her pauses. He didn't rush them. When she grew quiet, he didn't fill the silence. He waited. That waiting unsettled her. She was used to being pulled forward, questioned, pressed. His patience felt like space. Space gave her room to feel. Sometimes what she felt was fear. Fear that this calm was temporary. Fear that once she relaxed, she would lose it. She had lost love before, right after trusting it. So she held back. Not from him, from herself. She kept pieces of her guarded, past disappointments, unspoken grief. She told herself she was being careful. Careful had once meant safe, but safe love required something different. It required presence. One evening they talked about nothing important. The day, the weather, a small inconvenience. She mentioned something personal casually, without thinking. He remembered it days later, not to reference it, not to question it, to respond to it. That moment stayed with her. He didn't collect information, he paid attention. Attention without expectation felt intimate. She noticed how he never tried to solve her feelings. When she spoke about stress, he didn't offer solutions. He listened. Listening without fixing felt like respect. She realized how often love had felt like correction. She had been adjusted, guided, improved. With him, she wasn't improved. She was accepted. Acceptance felt vulnerable. She wondered how long it would last. The fear wasn't dramatic, it was persistent. She didn't share it immediately, she observed it. She noticed how he remained consistent, not intense one day and distant the next. Consistency calmed her. But it also brought up grief. Grief for the years she had spent believing love was something to be earned. She mourned the younger version of herself who worked so hard to be chosen. She didn't blame herself. She understood. She had done what she needed to survive. Survival, she was learning, is not the same as intimacy. One afternoon, she said something honest. Not dramatic, simple. She told him that calm made her nervous. She expected confusion, reassurance, maybe defensiveness. He nodded. That was it. He didn't ask her to explain further. He didn't take it personally. He stayed the same. That response mattered. He didn't need her to be healed to be present. She noticed how rarely he asked where things were going. He seemed comfortable letting things unfold. That patience gave her permission to arrive slowly. She didn't feel rushed toward intimacy. She felt invited. Invitation felt different from pursuit. She realized she had never been invited before. She had always been chased or abandoned. This was neither. She began to relax into the rhythm they shared. Not perfect, but steady. She still had moments of doubt, moments where she pulled back emotionally. He noticed. He didn't punish her for it. No withdrawal, no pressure. That alone built trust. Trust didn't arrive as certainty. It arrived as safety. Safety allowed her to breathe. She started sharing more naturally, not because she felt she should, because she wanted to. She told him about her past, not in detail, in essence. He didn't interrupt. He didn't minimize. He didn't reframe it for optimism. He acknowledged it. Acknowledgement felt grounding. She realized how rarely her experiences had been met without judgment. With him, she wasn't questioned. She was heard. She noticed how love no longer felt like a test. There were no rules to follow, no performance to maintain. She didn't feel watched. She felt accompanied. That difference mattered. She began to trust not just him, but herself. She trusted her ability to notice red flags. She trusted her intuition. She trusted her pace. Trusting herself made trusting him easier. She stopped waiting for disappointment. Not because she was naive, but because she felt anchored. She knew now that even if this love ended, she wouldn't disappear. That realization gave her strength. She wasn't clinging. She was choosing. Love that didn't need proving, didn't make promises. It showed up. And slowly, steadily, she allowed herself to stay. The hardest part of safe love is believing you're allowed to stay open. As time passed, something shifted quietly between them. Not dramatically, not all at once. It was in the way silence no longer felt awkward, in the way her body stayed relaxed instead of alert, in the way she no longer rehearsed what to say next. She noticed herself settling, and that scared her. Settling meant trusting. Trusting meant risk. She had learned long ago that vulnerability was expensive. In the past, opening up had come with consequences. Being misunderstood, being minimized, being told she was too sensitive or not enough. So she had learned to share carefully. With him, careful began to feel unnecessary. That realization brought another feeling with it. Fear. Fear that if she let herself relax completely, she would lose control. Control had once protected her. She didn't want to lose it. One evening, the conversation turned inward. Not intentionally, it just happened. She spoke about something from her past, something she usually summarized quickly and moved past. This time she didn't rush. Her voice stayed calm, but her hands trembled slightly. She expected interruption, advice, reframing, comforting words meant to move things along. None came. He stayed quiet, not distant, present. That presence gave her permission to keep going. She shared moments she rarely named, times she felt unseen, times she stayed longer than she should have, times she blamed herself for other people's choices. She didn't dramatize it. She didn't ask for sympathy. She simply spoke. He didn't react the way she expected. There was no shock, no attempt to fix her story. He acknowledged it, simply. He didn't tell her she was strong. He didn't call her resilient. He said he understood. That word landed differently. Understanding didn't feel like praise. It felt like recognition. Something loosened in her chest. She realized how often her pain had been turned into a lesson instead of being allowed to exist. With him, it existed. She noticed how safe that felt, and how unfamiliar. Later that night, alone, she replayed the conversation, not to analyze it, but to feel it. She had shared something real without being diminished. That mattered. In the days that followed, she felt lighter, not because her past had changed, but because it no longer needed guarding. She noticed herself laughing more easily, speaking without filtering every thought, letting moments be imperfect. He didn't demand emotional consistency from her. On days she was quiet, he didn't ask what was wrong. He let quiet be quiet. That respect built something solid. She also noticed how she began to show care differently, not by overgiving, not by anticipating his needs, by being present. She checked in when she wanted to. She listened without fixing. She stayed without proving. That balance felt new. She didn't lose herself in the connection. She didn't hold back either. She existed within it. Still, vulnerability has layers. One memory lingered, a deeper wound. She had been abandoned emotionally before right after trusting someone. That memory surfaced unexpectedly. One afternoon, something small triggered it. A delayed message. A missed call. Old fear rushed in. Her body reacted before her mind could reason. She felt the familiar tightening, the urge to withdraw, to protect herself by pulling away first. She noticed it happening. That awareness stopped her. She didn't disappear. Instead, she told him. Not emotionally, not dramatically, honestly. She said sometimes silence scared her. She expected reassurance. He didn't rush to give it. He listened. Then he explained. Calmly, clearly. No defensiveness, no dismissal, just context. Context restored balance. She felt the fear soften, not because he promised anything, but because he responded with steadiness. Steadiness mattered more than words. She realized something important. Safe love doesn't eliminate fear. It gives you space to face it. She didn't feel embarrassed for needing reassurance. She felt human. That acceptance allowed her to stay open. She noticed how she no longer questioned his intentions constantly. She observed his behavior. Behavior matched words. That consistency built trust slowly. Trust wasn't a decision. It was accumulation, moment by moment, response by response. She began to imagine a future without immediately preparing for loss. That didn't mean she ignored reality. It meant she wasn't governed by fear. She didn't rush toward commitment. She allowed connection to deepen naturally. Depth felt safer than intensity. She understood now that love didn't have to hurt to be meaningful. Pain had once been proof. Now presence was. She didn't need grand gestures. She needed reliability. He offered that without effort. She realized something quietly powerful. She wasn't healing because of him. She was healing with him. That difference mattered. Healing felt mutual, not transactional. She didn't lose herself. She expanded. She allowed love to meet her where she was, not where she had been. That was new, and for the first time in her life, vulnerability didn't feel like a risk. It felt like relief. Love didn't change their lives overnight. It settled into them, slowly, steadily, without asking permission. There was no moment where they decided what they were becoming. They simply continued. Days folded into each other quietly. Conversations deepened without being labeled. Time together grew familiar without losing meaning. She noticed how the absence of pressure made everything clearer. There were no timelines to follow, no expectations to meet, no roles to perform. Commitment arrived not as a declaration, but as reliability. He showed up when he said he would. Not perfectly, consistently. Consistency created safety. Safety allowed her to soften. She noticed how her body responded to this steadiness. She no longer braced herself for disappointment. She no longer anticipated emotional shifts. Her nervous system rested. That rest changed her. She began to trust the rhythm of their connection. Not exciting, not dramatic, sustaining. They shared ordinary moments, meals prepared without urgency, conversations that drifted without direction, silences that felt companionable, not empty. She realized how much of love had once been about intensity. Intensity had felt important. Now, importance looked different. It looked like remembering small preferences, like respecting space, like showing care without announcement. He didn't need to be reminded. He noticed. She felt considered, not managed, not corrected. Consideration felt intimate. She noticed how disagreements unfolded, not with escalation, not with withdrawal. They paused. They listened. They returned to the conversation without keeping score. That mattered. In the past, conflict had felt dangerous. Here, it felt navigable. She didn't fear saying the wrong thing. She trusted repair. Repair built confidence. She noticed how she no longer felt the urge to test his affection. She didn't provoke reassurance. She didn't withhold to feel chased. Those patterns belonged to a different life. This life felt simpler. She also noticed how commitment did not require sacrifice of self. She didn't adjust her needs to maintain harmony. Harmony arrived naturally when both people stayed honest. She maintained her routines, her friendships, her independence. Love did not replace her life. It fit into it. That fit mattered. She felt no need to merge identities, no need to become more agreeable. She was enough as she was. He didn't ask her to be optimistic. He accepted her realism. He didn't rush her healing. He respected her pace. That patience felt like partnership. She realized how often love had demanded speed, commitment too soon, forgiveness too fast, understanding without processing. Here nothing was rushed. Time did the work. They made plans without pressure, not promises, possibilities. Possibilities felt lighter. She trusted that, whatever direction life took, she would not disappear inside it. She had learned how to stay present without losing herself. That confidence allowed her to enjoy love without fear of dependence. She was not leaning on him. She was standing beside him. That distinction changed everything. She noticed how love no longer felt like something she had to maintain. It maintained itself through mutual care. She didn't keep mental records. She didn't monitor effort. Balance existed naturally. She allowed herself to imagine a future without rehearsing failure. Not because she believed in permanence, but because she trusted resilience. She trusted herself to adapt. She trusted him to communicate. Communication was steady, not perfect, honest. She didn't feel the need to be emotionally available at all times. She rested when she needed to. He respected that. Respect deepened affection. She noticed how her laughter came more easily now, how her thoughts felt less crowded. Peace was becoming familiar. That familiarity surprised her. She had once believed that love required vigilance. This love required presence. She realized how much she had grown, not because love changed her, but because it allowed her to be herself. That freedom felt rare. She didn't call this love exciting. She called it safe. Safety felt revolutionary. She understood now that love did not need to prove itself through suffering. It revealed itself through care, consistency, and respect. She no longer asked whether this love would last. She focused on how it felt now. That focus grounded her. She had learned to recognize love that didn't need proving, and she allowed herself to stay. Love didn't arrive as a promise. It arrived as a place she could rest without losing herself. She noticed the change one ordinary morning. Not because something special happened, but because nothing felt heavy. She moved through her day without bracing, without anticipating disappointment, without adjusting herself to be easier to love. That absence of tension felt unfamiliar and grounding. Love had settled into her life without rearranging it completely. She still had her routines, her independence, her sense of self. Love did not replace those things. It respected them. She realized how rare that was. In the past, love had demanded transformation. Be more patient. Be less emotional. Be quieter. Be easier. This love asked for nothing. It met her where she was. She noticed how they navigated life together, not as a unit that erased individuality, but as two people moving in the same direction. They shared space without crowding it, support without control, affection without obligation. That balance mattered. She didn't feel consumed by the relationship. She felt accompanied. Accompaniment felt safe. She noticed how conflicts no longer unsettled her. Disagreements didn't feel threatening. They felt manageable. They spoke. They paused. They returned. No silent punishments. No emotional distance as leverage. Repair felt natural. She trusted repair more than perfection. She also noticed how she no longer feared the future, not because she believed everything would last forever, but because she trusted herself to remain intact. She no longer tied her worth to someone else's presence. Love added to her life. It did not define it. That distinction allowed her to stay relaxed. She didn't hold on tightly. She didn't pull away. She stayed. Staying felt like a choice, not a compromise. She reflected on who she had been before, the woman who worked hard to be loved, who measured affection by effort, who believed pain meant depth. She felt tenderness for that version of herself. That woman had survived. This woman was living. She realized how much she had changed, not because love fixed her, but because love didn't ask her to be fixed. She was already whole. The relationship grew in quiet ways, shared routines, inside jokes, unspoken understanding. There were no grand declarations, just presence. Presence became their language. She noticed how safe she felt expressing needs, not defensively, not apologetically. He listened, not to respond, to understand. Understanding deepened trust. Trust softened everything. She no longer monitored herself constantly. She no longer prepared for abandonment. Fear lost its authority. She still had moments of doubt. That didn't disappear completely, but doubt no longer controlled her behavior. She trusted the present without demanding guarantees. That trust felt earned. She also noticed how love no longer distracted her from herself. She still pursued her interests, maintained her friendships, protected her quiet time. Love fit around her life, not over it. She didn't feel the need to justify the relationship to anyone. It didn't look dramatic. It didn't look impressive. It felt right. She realized something important. Love that needs proving keeps you anxious. Love that doesn't keeps you grounded. Grounded meant she could rest. Rest didn't mean stagnation. It meant sustainability. She stopped asking what love should look like. She focused on how it felt. It felt calm. It felt respectful. It felt steady. That steadiness allowed her to imagine growing older without fear. Not because she depended on him, but because she felt supported. Support didn't mean being saved, it meant being met. She noticed how love didn't demand her best version every day. Some days she was tired, some days quiet, some days uncertain. All of it was allowed. Allowance felt like freedom. She no longer performed intimacy, she lived it. She didn't have to earn affection. She received it. She didn't have to explain herself. She was understood. That understanding didn't come from words, it came from consistency. Consistency created belonging. Belonging didn't feel like attachment. It felt like choice. She chose him. He chose her. Not loudly, daily. She realized how different that felt from the love she once chased. She wasn't chasing now. She was present. Presence made everything simpler. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't need to. This love existed now. And now was enough. She had learned something quietly profound. Love doesn't need to be proven when it's built on respect. It doesn't need reassurance when it's built on trust. It doesn't need effort when it's built on care. She didn't feel overwhelmed by love. She felt supported by it. That was the difference. She allowed herself to stay. Not because she was afraid to leave, but because she felt no reason to. Love that didn't need proving didn't ask her to disappear. It allowed her to arrive, fully, honestly, as herself. And for the first time in her life, that felt like home.